panic set in? Were there tears? Were there howls of regret? The gnashing of teeth and rending of hair? Sadly, I'll never know. I never heard from them again. They didn't even bother making another try. And as for me, well, I decided to buy some beer that night to celebrate once again. Occasionally, I'll tell my students the tale. A humorous reminder that yes, I'm accommodating, and yes, I'm pretty laid back.
Get
Also,
ready for the
not
next
idiots,
battle.
So please, don't try to play me. The original poster really does sound like a good professor. They gave these people every opportunity to prove that their opinions, like they seriously gave them the extension to
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Round three. Fight. Round four. Fight. Final round. Fight.
Go home.
Means anything weird by that, but I ignored the message. Then, a few days ago, he tried to invite my boyfriend over to watch a game, and he didn't.
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight.
smoothly can. And hopefully when he does, Dan is able to see where he's coming and hopefully straighten up his act. Am I the jerk for backing out of paying for my sister's wedding dress after she mocked the fact that my husband-to-be ran off with his mistress and dodged my wedding day completely? Here's what happened. So I had an incident on my wedding day back in 2017 where my former fiance abandoned me and ran away with his pregnant mistress. That image and those details are forever ingrained on my mind, and I'll never forget how I felt that day. This was truly a turning point in my life, and my family has always been there for me, so I kept close to them. My younger sister is currently engaged, and her wedding will be in a few months. She's struggling with money, so I decided to help her, as well as her fiance, and just pay for the wedding dress. This allowed her to be able to buy her dream dress gown, which cost about $7,000.
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Round three. Fight. Round four. Fight. Final round. Fight.
Style that she just didn't respond well to. She and I have always been very close though, and she considers me to be her mom. The problem is, since we've started fostering the younger three, she's had to watch how good of a dad he is with the little ones, and gets upset that he wasn't the same with her. It wasn't always rational, but there was a lot of resentment and a lot of jealousy that she's still having to work on. Now, my husband has a niece who's 18 years old who will be on her own this fall. She got a full scholarship from a school that's 10 minutes from us and a school that's an hour away. My husband wants her to move in. He'll get her a car. That way she can go to the school that's 10 minutes away and still obtain financial support from us. But here's the thing. I don't want to do that. For starters, we've already told Sarah that we will not be covering 100% of her expenses. She has a job that pays half of her car payments and insurance, as well as all of her gas, maintenance, and repairs, pays her portion of the phone bill, and is responsible for all of her spending money. Us paying for all of that with his niece, he would have to either admit that he has a favorite, or we would have to fully support both of them. I said if she goes to the school an hour away, in an area with a much cheaper rent, I wouldn't mind sending her some money every month, just to help out with rent and groceries, with the expectation that she has a job and pays for some of her own expenses. He says we shouldn't expect her to be on her own yet, and thinks that only partially supporting her is still too harsh. I told him we can't do anything for his niece that we're not already doing for Sarah. But he thinks it's unfair to compare the two, and says that Sarah should be grateful for what we provided for her, no matter what we get from other people. I don't like how he's going about it, and he thinks I'm spoiling Sarah while abandoning his niece to spare Sarah's feelings. So I honestly just want to see if I'm in the wrong, because at this point I seriously don't know what to do. I personally think the original poster is absolutely in the right. I mean, despite the troubled relationship that your husband has with Sarah, it would be really contradictory and probably really toxic for you guys to welcome this niece into your home, as well as basically pay for all this stuff when you explicitly told Sarah that no, we're not going to pay for everything. It's gonna come off as if you're choosing favorites, which is definitely not gonna help the situation, seeing as Sarah already feels like she's being left out in a lot of ways. So hopefully you can get through to your husband, because this is not a smart decision on his part, and it's just gonna cause a lot of drama that really is unnecessary. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share my inheritance with my cousins? So I'm a 31-year-old female, and my mom passed away when I was 4 years old. She was 26 when she passed, and my dad has never been in the picture. After my mom's death, my brother, my uncle by the name of John, that's not his real name, became my legal guardian. He passed away suddenly 2 months ago. My grandparents started a watchmaking company over 50 years ago. They ran it for over 40 and retired a decade ago, meaning that my uncle took over. When I went to live with my uncle, he just started working for the company full-time after graduating college, and instead of having a babysitter, he would just take me to work if I was not in school. My uncle met his wife when I was 10 years old, and she was very nice to me. They got married when I was 12 and had their first child a few months later. When my cousin was born, things changed. She stopped packing my lunches and other stuff, and I know that she is not my mom, but before she would just look at me with a smile, and after she would barely acknowledge my existence. They ended up having 2 more sons. Anyways, I worked there part-time as a teenager helping out, and my uncle taught me a few things. My uncle took over the company in 2012, and my grandparents gave it to him. He took it from 145 employees all the way up to almost 1,000 employees in 10 years, even starting a watchmaking school. I went to college, and then my uncle hired me as a full-time designer. Time went on, and my cousin would work for like 4 hours a week and get a full week's pay, and I've heard all my cousins and my aunt talk about how watchmaking is stupid and that it's too much for something that only tells you the time. This comment in particular is really ignorant, because we don't make only watches anymore, and I thought my cousin paid just enough attention to know that, but it seems like I was wrong. So
Wow, you were
interested
fucking
in
bad.
back to present day. After my uncle's funeral, my aunt informed me that they were selling the company as it is useless to them, but they were willing to let me make an offer first. I was so heartbroken. I just lost my uncle and was probably going to lose my job as well, because there was no way I could ever get that kind of money. Last week, my uncle's will was read, and all the money was to be divided in equal parts amongst me, my cousins, and my aunt. She got his part of the house.
Scared of
and I got
something?
the
Come on,
company,
bitch.
100% of the company, and they were furious. I now have some friends saying that it's their right to be upset for not getting something they understood they would be getting. And extended family is calling me a thief because it was their father's company. And my cousins texted me saying things like, just give it to us, while also saying they're going to be contesting the will and they're meeting with their lawyers tomorrow. They have even said they're going to destroy me for what I'm doing. My grandparents are on my side, but I just feel like I'm being harassed by all these people. What should I do? Your family is super toxic. Like,
Get
first
ready
off,
for
they
the
didn't care
next
about that
battle.
company at all. And if you really wanted to keep that going, you really could if you wanted to.
手の内で
If you didn't want to. When it comes to the will itself, you definitely want to try and get a lawyer because it sounds like your extended family is probably going to fight tooth and nail to try and get what they want. And while it is unfair for you, that is just the reality of how selfish they are. But hopefully this all works out for you and you're able to find some kind of peace regardless of the result. Thanks for watching. If you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out at the description below and subscribe.
Good night.
My kid's teacher does not allow snacks or class. My kid is diabetic and hypoglycemic. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. My 47-year-old female had a daughter, 13-year-old female, who is type 1 diabetic and sometimes hypoglycemic. Due to this, we set up a 504 that says you can get a snack in class whenever needed, along with other accommodations. Anyway, at one point, one of her teachers, who's apparently a new teacher, denies her a snack while hypoglycemic. She nearly passes out, but in the next class she's in, the teacher has enough common sense to let her eat a snack before passing out in school. When she told me, I immediately called the teacher. When she called her, I lectured her and told her that she needed to let my daughter eat a snack when needed. She says snacks aren't allowed in class, but I told her that due to my daughter's violent behavior, she's required to keep my daughter reception time and recommended she give another read. Before hanging up, I told her that if she ever does this again, I'll contact the principal and let him know. I recorded this call on my husband's phone, by the way. A month goes by and the same thing happens again. I request a meeting with the principal and my husband plays back the call between me and the teacher. I tell him she's done this twice and needs to have a talk with her. Turns out he actually fired her for ADA violations. How would I know? I ran into her in Publix. She told me it's my fault that I got her fired over some stupid snacks, and I need to stop raising an entitled brat. Instead of arguing back, I just walked away. Was I really the jerk?
Oh, you do this shit every fucking round?
No need to worry here, original poster. You're not the jerk. This teacher needed to acknowledge this child's condition. Yes, there are rules, but there are also rules regarding the 504 that are meant to allow exceptions to those rules. You can't choose which rules you want to listen to. They are both rules. If you're so rule specific, you should be on top of all of them. And yes, you should put your daughter at risk. And if she did this for your daughter, you know what to do with another kid who had another condition that she was willing to accept. What if she has a peanut butter sandwich sitting on her desk for lunch and the kid in the front row has a nut allergy? Is she going to ignore that, potentially just leave it there and say he's a little brat? It just doesn't make sense. You're just looking out for your kid. You did nothing right. This one needs to get her crap together. Clearly she hasn't read it yet. A buddy of mine has essentially a jerk button in his line of work. My band's drummer, John, is also a sound guy. For several years before we hooked up musically, he had been doing sound for other bands I was in, as well as for touring acts I booked shows for. He's very good at what he does, and pretty fast at playing. Anyway, he's the nicest guy in the world at band practice, ever or running sound for other bands. He can be pretty crafty. Very little patience for bands who start late or end late. Less patience for bands who do encore when they're the second band playing their live. Very little patience for singers who flutter while cupping the microphone ball with both hands. Anyone, in general, just an altogether grouchy sound band. For example, he ran sound once for this 7 or 8 piece ska band. One of the trombone players said he needed 2 mics, one for his horn and one for his backup vocals. Normally, at this venue, a 120-seater, John didn't bother to mic horns at all. Rolling his eyes, John set up a Shure Beta 58 and some AKG condenser mic.
sure is for your vocals and ATC is for your horn. He said, don't blow your horn into vocal mic because your horn is about 3 decibels louder than your voice. And if it properly mixed, horn player nods his head. During the second song of the set, the trombonist was set to get a solo. Right before the solo starts, he grabs both mics and pushes them close together so that the capsules are actually touching. He then blows this fortissimo opening note into both mics. I was sitting at a table in the back by the soundboard at the time. John's limiters caught most of it, and I still had ringing in my ears for 2 days. At the end of the song, John mutes both of the guys' mics, and then basically threatens to read out the guy's plumbing with his own horn. John doesn't this through his talk mic, which is clearly audible over the monitor. Person laughter, and the horn player goes bright red in the face. At any rate, for a year, I had heard John Brett dance with the stuck button. Band too long to set up, or whose members repeatedly focused to follow reasonable directions. Please keep that vocal mic away from the monitors, for example. Alright, again, and who hit the suck button on you guys? I took it to mean that he would intentionally make those sound effects, but he never followed through on the thread, so I took it as a vague general warning. So anyway, a little while back, we started down for a 4-band show. The second band, a Fox 20/Train kind of band, had been running 20 minutes behind before they could play a note because their lead guitarist was late. Their allotted set time is 40 minutes, but their last song went over, and by the time it's done, those for almost 45. John says quietly over the talkback mic, "Hey guys, you're done." The singer says loudly over the vocal mic, "Yeah, man, said you gotta get off the stage. We got one more song to do." As we kick it into another sweeping vocal rock, John shakes his head. Then the most amazing thing after their encore, they straight to another song without announcing it. Apparently, the hopes that John wouldn't notice it was a different song. John leans over to me to be heard over the hey, wanna see this suck button? Sure. Why? I think he's going to buck with the levels or just turn them off or something. Instead, he reaches one of his racks and starts scrolling through patches on his dusty Digitype. Sure enough, he gets to a patch titled Suck Button. He engages it, and all hell breaks loose. The lead singer and lead guitarist who was singing backup immediately started singing way off key. They try to get back into tune, fail, trail off the main line, try again, and start blaring at each other. The guitarist is so distracted by this that he starts muffing the chord progression. If not for the drummer, I think the whole song would have derailed. For the entire 4-minute duration of the song, I was treated to this jerk dance sounding like rap, getting madder and madder. John is
Finish! Subjects up by 1 step, but only
So the audience out in front of the mains was treated to the sound of 2 guys trying to get in tune, only to be utterly confused. If they got it sounding right in the monitors, then they could tell something was grossly wrong in the mains. And each of the singers thought it was the other guy who was singing out of tune. I just about died laughing. Okay, I actually really love this story. This guy literally has a jerk button. I think this is something that we all need in life. Unfortunately, it wouldn't apply to all situations. But if only there was a way. Perhaps we all just need to take inspiration from this gentleman and learn to find what our own suck button is in life. Whatever profession you're in, see if you can develop a suck button to deal with the jerks that you have to deal with on a daily basis. If nothing else, maybe you'll have another Reddit post for me to read later. Entitled Parent I used to babysit for when I was 13 tries to get me to babysit again over a decade later. So there was a neighbor we had when I was in middle school, and I used to babysit for her. She was a nice enough lady, and she had an 8-year-old time. I would just go over to her house with them after school for a few hours for some extra money. She eventually got different hours at her job, I think. Maybe it was another reason, but either way, she didn't need me to babysit anymore after like 6 months or so. About a year later, I haven't really thought about her since. I'm now almost 25. I have my own house and work a 9-to-5 job. I got on Facebook like 2 weeks ago. I don't have the app, I just check on my computer every once in a while. And I had a message from the woman I babysat. Basically, it's been so long. How are you doing? I used to babysit my son years ago when you lived down the street. My son actually had his own baby earlier this year. I'd love for you to meet her. We could actually use someone to watch her Wednesday to Friday before we send her to get to meet her. You were great with my son, so you were the first person I thought of. I was so confused by this message. I babysat her son for maybe 6 months over a decade ago, and she wants me to come and babysit her infant granddaughter now? I was the first person she phoned up. I messaged her back and essentially said, "It's good to hear from you. That's great that Mike had a daughter. She looks so cute in your picture. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in watching her. I'm sorry. I work until 5 and would be unable to anyways. But I hope you find someone." So it's been 2 weeks since this, and I have gotten, no joke, 10 more messages from her begging me to babysit her granddaughter. I barely know these people, but she will not stop asking me. She even asked me to change my work schedule so I'd be able to. I mean, $10.
You win.
少しは楽しめたぞ。次だ。
Sorry. What? This lady, I'm just as confused reading this as our original poster is, I think. Like, nothing here adds up. Why is the original poster the first person you thought of? And when you said no, why are you so persistent about it? You know there's services that you can hire, right? Or go to a family member or something? But this person's literally almost a stranger to you. And the person that you knew 10 years ago isn't going to be the person they are now. They're a full-grown adult.
Get ready for the next battle.
$10 an hour? Come on. If I were the original poster, though, I
せいぜい私を
entertainment value.
追い詰めてみせろ。
Because I accidentally cursed in front of him. I'm a 27-year-old female, and my husband is a 32-year-old male. His older brother, his wife, and his 5 kids over for dinner this weekend. My brother-in-law is a pastor in a pretty popular church in our city. Now, both myself and my husband are not very religious people by any means. We both work in the medical field. He's a cardiologist and I'm a nurse. So we've always had good scientific views on things. His side of the family is very religious though. So we always keep our views to ourselves to be respectful and go along with their religious things they do, I guess. For example, praying before eating. So for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, one thing that they don't condone is cursing, which I'm aware of and respect when they're around. My husband and I recently bought a new house, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law have been bugging us to see it. We're in low contact with them as they're really over the top with their religious views and shame us for not having the same views. But we thought, why not so we can see our nieces and nephews? Both my husband and I had this past weekend off work, so we planned a dinner with them and their kids. Everyone's at the table. Sister-in-law, my husband, and I are in the kitchen making Play-Doh. I'm pulling one of the dishes I made out of the oven when I accidentally lose my grip and my hand hits the burning hot pan. My first reaction is yelling, "Sleep." Except I didn't say great. My sister-in-law gasps. My husband comes running over asking if I'm okay, and that I should have let him take that home. I grab some ice and head over to the table. My brother-in-law, who's sitting at the head of the table, is sitting there silently, kind of shaking his head. Not even in, "Are you alright?" or anything. The first thing he says to me is that cursing was very offensive to my family. No, we don't, man. Are you going to apologize to me? I'm sitting there, kind of in shock for a moment, when my husband comes to my defense and starts explaining to brother-in-law that it wasn't intentional and that it was an in-moment reaction. He starts going off about how that's unacceptable and a person of his rank doesn't condone or want to be in the presence of vile words like that. So I say back to him, "I'm sorry, brother-in-law. Maybe if you weren't acting so holier than thou and got up and helped us in the kitchen, I wouldn't have cursed. And my hand's fine, by the way, thanks for asking." They leave shortly after dinner, and ever since then, my husband's side of the family has been bombarding us with texts about how we embarrass brother-in-law and sister-in-law, sending us quotes from the Bible and articles about why cursing is unholy and things like that. My husband and I have honestly been getting a good laugh out of this and think that everyone is overreacting. I kind of feel bad, though, for my nieces and nephews, and feel like maybe I should have bitten my tongue, but I don't know. Am I the jerk? Sorry, you're asking if you're the jerk for having a completely normal reaction to being in sudden immense pain? No, you're not. I'm going to avoid getting into too much religious stuff here, just to try and keep this as clean as possible for you guys. We don't need any controversy. Everyone's entitled to believe in whatever they want to believe in, and that goes both ways. You have to understand that other people don't want your way of life, and in that split moment, you need to understand that it's a perfectly normal reaction. Acting all high and mighty the way you are isn't making you a better person. It doesn't put you above the person that you're putting down. They're in pain, and you're being a complete jerk over a word. A simple sound that when it comes out of someone's mouth, people decided a few hundred years ago that it was offensive. Believe it or not, society changes. It evolves. Just because you've chosen not to doesn't mean you can expect the same from everyone else. Original poster, not a jerk. Brother-in-law, grade A jerk. Holy or not. When our parents died, my brother refused to look after me. Now, years later, he needs help. Well, guess what, buddy? I'm a 24-year-old male, and my parents passed away when I was very young. I have 3 siblings, and 3 brothers. 4 of them are much older than me. After my parents passed away, I wanted to live with either my sister or my second brother, but both of them made it very clear that they don't want me. I didn't want to go with my oldest brother because he's our half-brother, and I wasn't close to him and he lives in another city, away from all my friends and the rest of our family. But he was the only one who wanted me, so I went with him. Unlike what I thought, my oldest brother is actually awesome, and I have a very good life. I still live with him. My other siblings didn't even bother to call much. This is a short background to catch you up. Recently, my second brother lost everything. I don't know or care about what happened. All I know is he's in a very bad spot. My sister left the country a few years ago, so my oldest brother's the only one who knows her. A few days ago, my oldest brother told us my brother and his family, wife and sons 11 and 17, wanted to live with us for a while because they have no other option. His wife doesn't have a family. We live in a 5-bedroom house. My brother's room, my room, his daughter's room, his son's room, and our gaming room. So we have the space for them to move in. My brother said he doesn't want to force us to give up our space and wants us to figure out something that works for us. My nephew said he's fine with giving up the gaming room or sharing for a short time, but I said screw them. I'm not sharing or giving up anything for them. And my niece does what I say, so she's on my side. My brother said he's a bit disappointed, but won't force us to do anything. However, my second brother and his wife thinks we're being selfish jerks. Yeah, this one just really feels like a story of what goes around comes around. I mean, you can't really blame our original poster for feeling anything different. His brother essentially was ready to abandon him, and now, years later, he's in a situation where he can't look after himself and needs help. Honestly, I just feel like he's getting a taste of his own medicine here. Don't get me wrong, I hope they figure everything out. And it has been a long time since this initially happened, so I hope the second brother has grown into a more mature adult. But I understand how our original poster feels, and I'm not going to call them a jerk because of it. My family leaves me behind on a trip and is then surprised when I decide to do the same thing to them. When I was 15 or 16, my sister was invited to a medical study for a disability she has. As a part of this study, her and my parents traveled to DC 3 times over the course of a year. The first time I couldn't go because my parents couldn't afford to buy me a ticket on top of what the study was funding. They found out when they were there that they would have totally funded my ticket. So when the second trip was running out the week of my 16th birthday, I was super excited because I thought I could finally see DC. I wasn't able to afford my school's 8th grade trip, so the idea of a Sweet 16 in DC was the best thing in the world to me, especially as a kid who was really interested in politics. My parents didn't allow me to go on this trip because the week we would have been there would have conflicted with my first day of school. I have an early September birthday. I was completely devastated because not only were my DC dreams crushed, but I was also going to be alone for my 16th birthday. My best friend's parents ended up letting me stay with them for 2 weeks so we could do something special for my birthday. I don't even remember why I couldn't go on the third trip. Probably something to do with school as well. We had a lot of time to sightsee and have fun, and it was a bummer to miss out on that with my family. I'm now 30 and I'm about to see
DC for the first time as I'm interviewing for a job. It's the ideal job because it's half remote and half on site, and I'd be able to split my time between DC and New York City. My interview is on Tuesday, but I'm flying in tomorrow to have some extra days to really see everything I want to see. And also just to give myself time to relax before a high-stakes interview. I'm funding this extra trip with some inheritance money I received late last year. When my parents found out about this trip, they asked if I could use some of that inheritance to fly them out so we could finally do a family trip together. They said they could show me some of the places they know and what became their favorite parts of DC on their trips. While I do have enough money to cover it, I don't particularly want to. I want this to be my own special trip where I'm doing what I want to do and seeing what I want to see. I also want the time that weekend to relax, and not have to go on a tour of all the places my family went to without me. I understand it's petty and that it's been a long time since all that, but it's those hurts to think about, even though it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. I told them no, and they're making it out to seem like I'm rejecting them and acting in revenge for these past trips, which is actually not true. It has way more to do with the stress of the interview and wanting to protect my peace than it does for any idea of revenge. I feel fine in my decision, but my family has called me a spiteful jerk, so I'm here as a reality check for myself. Okay, so you understand that yes, it is maybe a little petty to be making this decision based off of those past experiences. But you know what? I think you're allowed to. Given what they did, it was a really jerk move on their part. And how they're feeling now is how you felt as a 16-year-old on your birthday. The reality check